I'm so glad that you're here this morning. My name is Matt. I'm the lead pastor here, and so we're glad that you keep coming back and putting up with more punishment here. But we're so thankful that you are joining us this morning. We're in a series on Proverbs right now, and Proverbs is really a book about wisdom. It tells us how to live life. It's the application of knowledge. It's not just knowledge, but it's how to wisely apply the knowledge that you know. And really what Proverbs is made up of and what it talks about, there's two types of people at least that are doing it wrong, and they are the simple and the fool. And the simple is somebody who just doesn't know any better. They don't know. They'd probably do the right thing if they were told, but they just don't know, and they don't know what to ask. They don't know the right questions to ask. And so there's the simple, but then there's also the fool. And the fool is somebody who hears advice and scoffs at it. The fool is somebody who refuses to listen and just wants to go on living their life. And kind of where we landed last week was with this question of which one are you? Because I have had many foolish moments and periods of my life, and I've had many simple moments throughout my life, but God willing, I have been listening to the advice of people around me. I've been reading the Word of God, and I've been intaking that, and I've been hearing it and wanting to understand it. And so let me help you understand why you should listen. Here's the thing, like if you have a car and it's broken down and you're trying to figure out how to fix it and no one can figure it out, ultimately you'd go back to the manufacturer and you'd say, listen, this keeps taking place. Can you help me find a fix for this? I do this with my computer all the time with various bugs and things. And I go back to the manufacturer, and ultimately what we're doing in Proverbs is we're going back to the manufacturer and we're saying, can you help me fix this? Can you help me fix this? Because our life is made up of a series of decisions. Our life is made up of a series of decisions. And depending on how you answer these questions, depending on how you deal with life, how you answer those things with the decisions that you make is how your life is going to go. Each decision that you make is incrementally taking you in one place or in one direction or another. And so what we have to understand is that the decisions that we make matter. They matter. And too many times in our culture, we have people who are saying, your decisions don't matter. Believe what you want to believe. Although that is very much being found out to be false. Because there is a moral standard. Everyone has a moral standard. And so ultimately, there is this idea that there is a moral standard and that your decisions do matter. And so what we're saying here is this, is that you can hear the wrong answer to your problem. You can get advice from coworkers. You can get advice from Facebook. You can get advice from the internet. You can think all on your own and say, I'm going to do this. But ultimately, what that could turn out to be is just fortune cookie wisdom, as we said on Easter Sunday. And you could just be going along with something that's just absolute foolishness. And why would you not go back to the source? Now, you may not believe that God exists, and you may have difficulty really believing that. But what I want to help you understand is this, is that this stuff works. And hopefully by seeing that it works, you see that God truly is the most wise being that ever was and is to come. That this God can help you straighten out your life. That this God can help you make decisions when your life is hitting the fan. And so we are talking today about relationships. And we're not just talking about love relationships, but that is definitely included. I've wanted to give a sermon on this for some time. I don't know why I haven't up until this point. But our relationships matter. The decisions that we make within the context of our relationships matter. We have so many things that are going on in our life. We have broken relationships in our home, in our workplace, in all parts of life. We have families that are falling apart. We have a community that is in upheaval. We have racial tension that's going on. There's relationships make up every single one of those things that's taking place. And if you're still not convinced, you need to hear many, and these were just off the top of my head, all of the different ways that we have conflict in our relationships. Workplace violence. We've invented words, we've invented phrases to talk about each area of violence. Workplace violence, road rage, domestic violence, class warfare, hate crimes, war crimes, racial violence, verbal abuse, physical violence, cultural violence. And you could probably think of 10 more. Like, why do we have all of these names for all of these things? Why do we have to name those things? It's because of this. It's not an uncommon occurrence to have marital strife. It's not an uncommon occurrence to have racial tension and racial violence and hate crimes. It's not an uncommon occurrence. And that's why we have to make up these words, and we have to say, somehow we have to name this. And so what our society has said is this, is that your decisions matter in your relationships. I don't even have to tell you that. You already know this. Your decisions matter in the way that you treat women. Your decisions matter in the way that you treat your coworkers. Your boss will make sure that you know that. Your decisions matter in the way that you treat your employees. Your employees will make sure that you know that. There's already a moral standard that you're living up to. Where did it come from? I want to tell you that the manufacturer, our God, is the one who's created this word, and he wants to inform you and I as to what wisdom truly is. But too often we say, I just really don't have time for that. I just kind of live life however I want. Guys are famous for this. Just keep on driving. Don't stop and ask for directions. Just kind of do this. We know this, right? We have problems with asking for directions. But men aren't the only ones who are simple or fools. We have women as well. And as I said last week, this book is written primarily to at least a man, if not men, originally. But obviously, it's in the Scripture, so it's for all of us. And so he's speaking to men. But this is really for all of us. It's really to communicate to us what our problem is and what is going on and how we can fix it. And so what we need to know is right here. Proverbs 18:19. I've got a lot of Proverbs for you this morning, so I want to ask you to hang with me. Proverbs 18:19 says this: "A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like the bars of a castle." Read it again. "A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like the bars of a castle." If you look at that proverb there, what it's saying is this, is what we already know. The impasse that we see in the racial tension in our country right now between just the establishment and, let's just say, white people who have predominantly been in power, all right? And then you have the Black Lives Matter and different movements like that. And there's this tension, and what's going on there, it's more unyielding than a strong city. It's like the bars of a castle. There is no getting past it. There's no getting past it. You may be experiencing this same thing in your marriage. And so you have relational conflict going on in your marriage. And I just want to say, we are a church that is full of young people and people who are newly married. Not all of you are newly married. Some of you are about to get married. Some of you have been married. Some of you, everybody knows that there is conflict that's going on. Some of you are in the heat of it right now. You're in the first couple years of marriage, and it's just, you're about to scratch out your eyes. You're just like, this is horrible. What's going on? I love this person so much. And now what's going on is that a brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city. And quarreling is like the bars of a castle. When you're fighting and when there's conflict, there's an impasse. And as a result, what's taking place is that community and intimacy come to a complete stop, right? You know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. In marriage, it's hard to be intimate when there's arguing going on. It's hard to have community with your friends, neighbors, co-workers when there's arguing going on. It's more unyielding than a strong city. It's like the bars of a castle, and you can't get through that because nobody is giving in, and what's taking place is a crazy cycle. It's a crazy cycle. And do you know what? the evidence of these phrases that we've come up with, all of these different types of violence, says this. It says it's just going to continue. Because you and I are broken people. You and I have issues, and our primary issues are keeping us from being able to come together in unity. They are keeping us from being able to come together in community and in intimacy with our spouses. It's keeping us from deep, long-lasting friendships. It causes discord and conflict in our churches. It causes discord and conflict in all areas of life. And do you know what? We refuse to listen to it. We refuse to listen to it. And so what we need to see here in Proverbs is this. Proverbs 20, verse 3. It is an honor for a man to avoid or to keep aloof from strife or conflict. It is an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife. But every fool will be quarreling. Every fool will be quarreling. Now, if you're married and you're here and you know that you've had a fight, don't be playing it off like you haven't. I'm in my 10th year of marriage right now, and actually our anniversary is this next week. 10 years together, can you believe that? And yeah, thank you, sir. Yes, yeah. We're not excited about marriage yet. Next week's about marriage, okay? The joys of marriage. But 10 years of marriage, and yet somehow we get to this point where we just get to this impasse. And here's the thing, is that each of us in our marriage can look at our spouse, and in a way we can say, they're the one who is at fault. And what you're saying when you say that is you're saying, you know what, they are the fool. But here's the thing, you're involved in the quarrel. You're involved in the conversation. And guess what? By default, that means that you and I are fools. We're fools. Because fools are the people who will be engaged in quarreling. Fools are people who are fighting. Think about the person that you're having an issue with right now. Think about the person that's hurt you the most. Think about the people in your life that have denigrated you and torn you down and things of that nature. The quarreling, the fighting, the bitterness is evidence of being a fool. It's not a question as to whether we are a fool. The answer is this, is that you and I are fools. And what happens is this, is that we get this crazy cycle going on. We get a crazy cycle going on, and we keep coming back to the same arguments. This is especially true in marriage, but it's true in every area of life. It's a neighbor who does something with their lawn, or turns on their radio really loud when your kids are outside and they're jumping on the trampoline really close to your fence, and you get upset. That can happen too. I'm just saying, occasionally that takes place too. Just a weird example there. It's classic rock, though, so I like that. Whoops, but in any case, there's this crazy cycle that goes on where people you just keep going into the same thing, and into the same thing, and into the same thing. And it just proves our foolishness. In fact, Proverbs 26:11 and 12 says this: like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Do you see a man who's wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for a fool than for him. Like a dog that returns to his vomit. Great topic this morning, right? Let's talk about barf, right? This is really good stuff here. But can you imagine how grotesque that would be? Like a dog that returns to his vomit is somebody who ends up in a crazy cycle, and it's just like you just keep eating the same thing. It's just nastiness. It's nasty. And what it's saying here is this, is that you have got to be somebody who says, I'm no longer going to be wise in my own eyes. I'm no longer going to be somebody who says, I've got this figured out. Oh yeah? Your marriage doesn't say that. Your relationships don't say that. Things around you are falling apart. Maybe not everything, but maybe there's just one. Or maybe you're just hurt by one person in your life. And that's evidence of that. Do not be wise in your own eyes. And then Proverbs 12:1, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. All right? Now, if my son, Marshall, were in here, Dad, you're not supposed to say stupid, and we have taught him that. But this is the scripture, so I have to use it, right? I mean, this is from God. He who hates reproof, if you hate correction, if you hate being told what's going on, if you hate someone coming to you and saying, you're doing it wrong, your life is falling apart, your marriage is going to fall apart, if you hate reproof, then what the scriptures say, I'm not saying it, the scriptures say that you're a fool and you're stupid. All right? Now, I'll bet that you did not come to church today to hear that you're foolish and stupid. But I just want to lay it down at the beginning here and just say what this truly is that if you will not, and if I will not listen to correction, then we are just flat out losing our minds. We're like a dog that's returning to his vomit. We're in this crazy cycle. And so what's it going to take? What's it going to take for you and I to say, you know what, I want things to be better? And oftentimes, you know, when I talk to people about what's going on in their marriage, a lot of times what I want to say is this, is like, let's imagine a day when things are going great. I know everything stinks right now, and I know that you and your wife or you and your husband are fighting all the time, and that there's no sex, and that there's no, give and take, and that there's nothing good going on. Imagine a day when things are going well. And what would that look like? Well, we would be living in peace, and we would be... We would get along, and we're going to have loving kids, and we're going to enjoy being together, and we're going to have friends over, and we're going to have parties, and we're going to, whatever it is that it looks like. So many of us do not have a vision of the future. And listen, if you like to live in conflict, if you want to live in fights, if you want to live in quarreling, then you go on doing what you're doing. But if you want to see things different, then you have got to do something different. Stupidity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I believe it's actually insanity. So you're also insane, all right? There's another insult for you, okay? So that's insanity. So how do these things take place? How do these conflicts take place? Let's kind of dissect it from the top down. We're going to start at the surface, and we're going to begin with Proverbs 18:2. Fools don't care about the other person's view. So it says this, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Now, if you're somebody who says, you know what, I don't care what they think or what they're feeling, they did this to me, and you got to know that you're wrong, and that's, and if you're raising your hands like I am in your marriage and you're over top of your wife, that never goes well. You're expressing your own opinion. You're talking loudly. You're saying, you know what, I'm right and you're wrong. But a fool is the person who, when they get into difficulty, when they get into problems in their marriage or in their work life, the people that they're around, when they get into problems, they just say, I don't care what you think. You did this to me. That's the fool. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding. There's no thought towards what does this person feel like. And I want to stop right there and just say, especially to married couples, when you got married, what you committed to, whether you know it or not, because God is the author. He is the author of marriage. When you got married, what you committed to is to say, I'm going to be one with you. And so your feelings are my feelings. Your thoughts are my thoughts. We're together in this. And the process, when in marriage, when you're coming together, the process is this, is that you are one flesh legally. You are one flesh physically, sexually. You've come together and become one flesh. But there are so many other factors that take years for you to become one flesh on. Like relationally and spiritually and emotionally, to come to the point. And this, I'm giving away the marriage sermon. I'm going to say all this again. And this is what is taking place. This is what God wants from you, is to understand what your spouse or the people in your life, what your friends are going through. And instead of talking, you quietly listen. You quietly listen. Secondly, Proverbs 25, 7b through 10. What your eyes have seen, do not hastily bring into court. For what will you do in the end when your neighbor puts you to shame? Argue your case with your neighbor himself, and do not reveal another's secret, lest he hears you bring shame. Lest he who hears you bring shame upon you, and your ill repute have no end. The NIV would say this: you will never lose your bad reputation. Now, what did that just say? It just said this: fools jump to conclusions. Instead of actually trying to hear what the other person is dealing with and understand what they're processing, you jump to conclusions and you say, this is why you did this. And so what this verse says here is like, what you have seen, don't hastily bring them to court. Now, this could be a legal court, but it could also be the court between you and this friend, and you start arguing your case like a lawyer. And you say, you did this and you did that, and you're jumping to conclusions. And you're taking it to your boss, or you're taking it to someone else, and you're arguing your case. And what it's saying is this, is that fools jump to conclusions. And it says this: argue your case with your neighbor himself, and do not reveal another secret. You're in the middle of this conversation, and you need to talk with them about it and not with everyone else. You need to discuss it with this person instead of bringing it to everyone else and talking about it and jumping to conclusions and saying, this is what this person did. Thirdly, Proverbs 29:11, a fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. What's that saying? It's saying this: fools cannot control their mouth. Fools cannot control their mouth. As soon as I feel offended, I come after you. And a lot of times the reason why we're doing that is because we have some hurt from our past. And so if you infringe on me, if you take advantage of me, as a fool, I come back at you and I say, oh yeah? And I go after it. And what the NIV, a different translation of the scripture would say, is that a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man quietly holds it back. A wise man keeps himself under control. I've told you before, this has been one of my biggest struggles in life. As a young man, I thought immediately I knew what was going on instead of trying to understand what was taking place, and I flew off the handle. And so like a block from here, a cop pulls me over, and I hop out of my 1970 Ford pickup. I'm maybe 18, something like that. And I was so upset because this cop had just pulled me over, and there was a guy who was right in front of me that had just gone across 4 lanes, no blinker, had cut everybody off, and then the cop pulls me over. And so we pull over in front of the park down here, and I wisely get out of the car, right? You ever done that before to a cop? Get out of the car and walk like this towards the police officer. Those go great. Those are great situations, right? And so the cop, obviously, hey, sit down, put your hands up in the air. I can't remember everything he said to me, I'm sure, lots of things. I ended up on the curb in cuffs, right? I am cuffed and stuffed. And so he gets me cuffed. I'm under control finally, and he says, he's like leaning down at me. He's like, now what in the world are you so mad about? And I said, you didn't pull that guy over in front of me, you pulled me over. And he says, buddy, I was just going to tell you that you got a blinker out. Oh, all right. My bad. Had another situation where all of my stories about my anger revolve around my driving, but I'm pulling out of the bank. And my old blue truck, which I still have, I was 21 years old when I bought it, and it's got 250,000 miles on it. And long story short, I was pulling out. It was a cool looking truck. It was very big. I felt like I was very powerful in it. But I pull out into the street, and there's a car coming. And then this person is coming like this, and they are just like, what? laying on their horn as though I had just infringed on their lane, and all of this is going through my mind. And so what do? I'm 21 years ago. I was 21 years old. This is almost 20 years ago, so far removed from this, and I full on do the double flipper. Boom. Both hands. Oh, yeah, I'll get you back. And right when this nice person is right in front of me, I'm like this, and I go, oh, that's Amber from church, who I've got to see next Tuesday. And so we had an awkward conversation. Hey, Amber, I was just kidding you. I said, yeah, I just do that to all my friends. I flip them off, and But man, I wish that I could say that those are the only times that I had done such stupid things. Like, Larry Osborne, a pastor down in California, says we pay a dumb tax all the time. And I've paid a lot of dumb taxes, right? The foolishness and the stupidity of the way that I acted towards people by jumping to conclusions, by deciding, oh, that's what they're doing right now. I'm going to show them, right? I've done that in my marriage. I've done that as a pastor. I've done that in every area of my life. And here's the thing. I'm a fool just as much as you are. Each one of us, it says in Proverbs, it says that within the heart of a child is foolishness is bound up. And so what's going on is that I have this foolishness that I'm born with, and progressively I am working through that. It's called sanctification. If you didn't know, sanctification is the process of being purged of foolishness. And here I am, I'm somebody, and God is little by little purging me of all of my foolishness. But unfortunately, I still run into situations where I just say, I don't want to be wise right now. I just want to be foolish. And so I have as much of a problem as you. So we've got to stop the crazy cycle in our life. And I want to tell you this so that maybe you can get some immediate help in your situations. If you're in the middle of a fight with somebody, if you're in the middle of a marital battle especially, if you're somebody who's in the middle of a fight with a neighbor or somebody who's close to you or nearby or a coworker or something like that, you need to hear some things. You need to hear everything I've already said, but also this. Proverbs 14:29. Here's how you stop the crazy cycle and at least get a breath. It says, whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. He who has a hasty temper is exalting foolishness. This is the work of a fool, is folly. He's exalting foolishness. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:4, a gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. Do you see a theme here? Your relationships, my relationships, the downfall of the things that are going on in our life completely has to do with your and my mouth. Our mouth is what is causing the problem. It's causing the issue. It's the way that we respond. It's the way that we act. It's the things that we're doing. Proverbs 26, verse 4 through 5. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Verse 5, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. And what did that just say? It's kind of a confusing verse, I think, especially in the NIV, because it doesn't include the word not in verse 4. And so it sounds like it's saying the opposite thing right after each other. But what it really means is this, is don't answer someone on the level that they've come at you. Don't answer someone according to how you think they just infringed on your right as a human being or as a person. Don't answer them like that. Have you ever seen one of those little nets like this that parents who don't want to play kickball with their kids give to them? I've gotten one for my kid, but, he kicks it, It's the dumbest thing. And then it's like a week later, it's broken in the backyard. But that's essentially what you're doing, is that every time you respond back, every time you respond hastily, you respond in anger, you're kicking that ball right into a net that's spring-loaded, and you're just like, boom, boom, in the face. Boom, boom. You just keep getting kicked back. And really what has to happen is that you can't kick that ball. A soft answer turns away wrath. A soft answer stops that argument. A soft answer. Wisdom in the midst of that situation and saying, this is headed towards a crazy cycle, and I have got to stop the madness. If you're in the middle of a crazy cycle in your marriage, you have got to stop the madness. And what this verse is saying in light of this, it's saying, answer not a fool according to his folly. Now, here is what you should not do. You're foolish, and so therefore I'm not going to answer you. All right? That's kind of defeating them. That is responding to them. But let's just say, if you have wisdom, what you could say is this, is you could say, I am not going to engage in foolishness right now. Each one of us in our marriages and in our relationships commit foolishness. And so at different times, your spouse may be foolish, and you may be foolish. But if you're both doing this, the crazy cycle is caused by two of them coming at each other and exhibiting foolishness. One of you has to stop the cycle. If you want a relationship to be different, you have to stop the cycle. You have to stop. And ultimately, what's going to take place is this, is that instead of going high, you've got to get low. You've got to get low. Instead of going high end, like coming after them and saying, this is what you've done, you've got to get low. And so what I found out early on in my marriage is this, is that with me and my wife, I grew up with 4 brothers, and my primary work experience was on job sites, and so I talked to men. And so I was very blunt. And some of you might say, well, you're still kind of blunt, and that's true. And my wife says that's still kind of blunt. But here's the thing. I would stand up and I would talk, and I was over top of her. I was doing this. And guys especially need to understand, you've got to lower your voice. You've got to sit down. Hey, some of you, this has probably happened, have scared someone in your life with the way that you communicate. And here's why you scared them. Here's why you scared a woman in your life. It's because you were standing, you were raising your voice, and it took things to the next level. Tears come out at that point. There's fear that you're going to hurt me potentially. There's all of these things. And even if it's not even that crazy, it creates this circumstance where things go to the next level. It is accelerating things. And so what guys have to do, especially, but women as well, we have to get low. We've got to sit down. Our voice needs to be lowered. We need to talk softly, a soft answer. That means volume as well as the type of words that we choose. Talk softly, quietly, sit down, and have a conversation. That's the beginning. That's just the beginning of stopping the crazy cycle in your life and in your marriage. And I know that many of you are dealing with this. I know this. I know that many of you are dealing with this on a regular basis. And the question is, will you be somebody who continues to exhibit foolishness? Or will you take a stand in the midst of your marriage or your relationships and say, I'm going to be the one who gets low. Will you get low with me? That's the beginning of that. But let's go to something else. Let's go a little deeper. Why does this happen? So we're talking about the surface thing. This is the stuff that's taking place. How does it happen? But then let's go a little deeper. Let's say, why does it happen? What's happening in our lives and in our hearts that's causing us to say, I want to be right so much that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to be right. What is happening in our hearts and minds that's causing us to say, like, I don't care how much you apologize. I am going to hold a grudge. I am going to make you pay for this. What's taking place? Well, it says this. Proverbs 10:12. Hatred stirs up strife, Hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers all offenses. Now, you might say, I don't hate my wife. I just want to do what I want. I don't hate my husband. I don't hate my coworkers. I don't hate the people that I'm in arguments. But here's the thing. But what you don't understand is that at the very root, at the very core of what's taking place in your heart of hearts, beyond what you even know about, there is hatred. And it's boiling over. And you might say, well, I still don't believe you. Well, Matthew 5:21, Jesus says this, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. So Jesus is saying, here's the law, and if you murder, then you're liable for that. And that's what we would say today. Like as long as you don't kill anybody, you're probably fine, right? But here's the thing. Our world is sitting here saying, I don't understand why we have all of these definitions of workplace violence and terrorism and road rage and marital strife and all of this stuff. I don't understand that. Well, and it's because of this. Because Jesus doesn't stop there. Jesus doesn't stop there. He says, you've heard the law. You know what you should and shouldn't do. He says, but I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hellfire. You might say, wow, that kind of took a turn there, right? I mean, don't murder and don't be angry. No, but if you're angry with your brother, if you're angry with your spouse, you might as well have killed them. And what Proverbs is saying here is it's saying simply almost the exact same thing. Hatred stirs up strife. Jesus is saying the fact that you say, you fool, the fact that you're judging the people around you, the fact that you're getting into these arguments and there's all of this conflict that's taking place, that fact says this, that you are actually someone who hates the people around you. It's actually hate that's going on in your heart. It's actually taking place. So how do you know that you're hating? How do you know that you're hating someone? You might say, well, I don't really hate. I'm just kind of frustrated with somebody. I just think that whatever. Look at this next verse, Proverbs 10:18. The one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slander is a fool. The one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slander is a fool. Now, if you look at that verse, what you're going to see here is that you're going to see kind of two things that seemingly don't go together. Whoever conceals hatred has lying lips. But the next part of the proverb is basically telling you something. Here's how you know that you have hatred. Here's how you know that you're hating someone and you're lying about it. You don't know that you're lying about it, but you're lying about it. Here's how you know. You're uttering slander about that person. You're slandering them. You might say, Tim Keller has a fantastic sermon on this, and I would encourage you to listen to anything he has, but he especially has a sermon on this. But he just talks about this, and he says that when you say, you know what, I just feel sorry for them. I just feel sorry for them, and I feel sorry for what they're doing, and I don't hate them. I just think that people like that shouldn't do things in this way or in that way. Do you know what you just did? You are somebody. Would you put that verse back up there, bud? You are saying this. You're saying, I don't have hatred, but then you turn around and you act in a hateful way by slandering them. And what is slander? Slander is not just saying something false about somebody. That is slander. But slander, according to the scriptures, is this. It's even giving a bad report about someone. It's talking about them in a way that says, they did this to me. And as a result, they shouldn't be trusted. Don't trust that person. I'm just warning you, you shouldn't hang out with that person. You shouldn't do this. That's slander. That's talking poorly about someone, and it is the equivalent of hate. Slander is simply veiled hate. That's what it is. Now, I want to tell you something. I want to talk to church people here real quick. I'm just talking to church people here. This happens even here. Praise God, I don't know about it right now, but I just want you to know that this happens here. And I wish that I could say it doesn't happen often, but I just want to tell you that Christian people do not pay attention to the moral precepts or the ways that we should live and the ways that we should talk often enough. When you even say something true about somebody, and you say, you know what, just saying, it's the truth. I'm not saying anything that's a lie. You're slandering them, and it is the equivalent of hate. And so why do you have that? Why do you and I have this? What's going on here? Well, it says in Proverbs 11:12, it says, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. What it's saying is this, that in the midst of this slander, you are belittling the person. You're belittling them by slandering them, and you're saying, they've done this to me. You're saying it to yourself, you're saying it to other people, you're warning people about that person, and you're essentially belittling them. And that belittling them is pride. What you have to say is, you have to say, you know what? I would never do that. I would never do that. You know what? I'm the type of person, what you're saying in that circumstance is you're saying, you know what kind of person I am? I'm the kind of person who will never do that kind of thing to someone. I'll never treat someone like that. I would never treat my spouse in this way, but you treat me this way all the time. You know what's going on? You're hating that person. You hate them so much that you feel like you have to slander them. And ultimately, the reason why you're slandering them is you have to say, I am better than that person. And you have to prove to yourself and to everybody else that I am better than this person. They're at fault for the breakdown of our marriage. They're at fault for this conflict in the church. They're at fault for why I'm not working there anymore. They're at fault, they're at fault, they're at fault. I am better. I am more righteous. I am more good than that person. So you have hatred, you have slander, you have pride. And how do you know that you have that? How do you know that all these things are taking place? Let's root it out a little bit more. Proverbs 24:17 through 18. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and be displeased and turn away his anger from him. Now, what that sounds like it's saying is like if you rejoice, God is not going to get that person, and you want God to get that person, right? Like, watch out, God's coming for you. You just wait. No, what this is saying is this, is that you're gloating. You're gloating. You want to see that person fail. I left that company and they didn't recognize my gifts and they didn't recognize my value, and I want that company to fail. Yep, serves them right. They didn't listen to me. You're gloating. It says in Romans 12:15, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. You know what you're doing? You're rejoicing when they're weeping, and you're weeping when they're rejoicing. You're gloating. You're gloating over what's going on. And what this verse is saying is that when you do that, what you've done is that you've made yourself equal in evil standards to the other person. You have become as evil as they were. And in a sense, what you're doing is you're almost, although this isn't really true, you're almost distracting God. And so instead of them being the one who answers to God, now God is looking at you and saying, your hate, your disdain, your gloating, your stuff is just as bad as what they have done. And do you know what's taking place at this point? You know what's happening? You know what you're doing? You're becoming the evil that you hate. You're becoming the very thing that you said that you would never do. Evil is transforming you into its own image. You have become evil yourself because you're gloating and you want them to suffer. You want them to pay. You want them to be weeping. And when they're weeping, you're rejoicing. Do you see how specific that is? Do you see this, how specific it is? When you look at your life and you say, how do I identify that I've been a fool? When you can honestly say to yourself, like, I really do want that person to fail. That's really what's going on. You know what's taking place in that moment? You're somebody who has hatred. You're somebody who wants revenge. You're somebody who wants that person taken down. And there's other scriptures that we could go on in that, but I'm going to skip a couple. What does it say? Proverbs 25, verse 21 through 22. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Again, it sounds like you're saying, okay, be nice to the person so that they can suffer then. Yeah. No, what it says is this, is that the only adequate way for that person to be punished is by God working through you to be kind to them. Their punishment is by you not responding, by not kicking the ball, by not being somebody who's saying, oh yeah, well, by not being somebody who's saying, do you know what that person did to me? By not telling yourself over and over again, I cannot believe that they did that to me. I cannot believe that they just went out on me like that. I cannot believe that they did these things. And some of you are even doing this to yourself. And what it's saying here is it's saying, if your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water to drink. You have got to be somebody who says this, I am going to bless the person who is coming after me. But how can you do that? You can't do that just on your own. Right? Modern psychology does not have categories for forgiving someone and moving on. Modern psychology has categories for getting over what you've gone through as a child, what you've dealt with, whatever psychosis you and I are dealing with. Modern psychology can tell you that, but it cannot tell you how to have closure in those things. It can only tell you how to deal with the pain of that. But here's why the gospel, here's why the scriptures are true, and it's because of this. Because it actually can change the way that you do things, the way that you live, the way that you think. Look at this, Proverbs 26:20. For lack of wood, a fire goes out, and where there is no whisperer or a gossip, quarreling ceases. As charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. What this is saying is this, is that when you stop putting wood on the fire, when you stop kicking the ball, when you stop doing these things, what happens is this, is that the quarreling, the conflict stops. It just stops because there's nothing else to burn. There's nothing else to take place. In a sense, you're putting yourself on the fire and you're burning yourself up in the midst of this, and you're causing both you and the person that you're in a fight with to be destroyed. But how do you do that? How do you not put wood on the fire? Because everything in you and me says, you know what? You can't honk at me like that. You can't pull me over when I shouldn't be pulled over. You can't not do this for me at home. You can't not recognize my gifts. I deserve this. And it's true, you might deserve it. It's true, you might have these things. But our world can only say this. It can only say, we've got to stop workplace violence. It cannot tell you how. We've got to stop domestic abuse, but it cannot tell you how. We've got to stop racial tension, but it cannot tell you how. And Proverbs says this, I'll tell you how. If you stop putting wood on that fire will go out. You want a vision for your life? Let's talk about a vision for your marriage. Things are going well. You're not getting into arguments. There are things that come up, but you sit down and you talk through it quietly. There are things that come up at work, but you go and you extend a handshake and just say, hey, buddy, you take it. It's no big deal. I'll take the next sale. There's a way to make the fire go out. And it begins with forgiveness. You can't not go after them and get justice unless you forgive. Because it's that justice that you want that's causing this fight. And so Tim Keller says you've got to do three things. He says, number one, you have to commit to not put wood on that fire by not bringing it up to that person any longer. Stop bringing it up. Stop talking about it with them. If every time you talk with that person, that thing keeps coming up, if every time you see those people, that thing keeps coming up, and you start rejoicing when they're weeping, or you're weeping when they're rejoicing, and this is taking place, you know that there's hatred in your heart, you've got to put the fire out by saying this: I'm not going to bring it up to that person. Secondly, I'm not going to bring it up to others. I'm no longer going to be a slanderer who hates the people around me. I'm no longer going to be somebody who hates people. I'm no longer going to be a fool who says, I don't have a hatred in me. I'm going to admit the truth about me and say, this is the root of what's going on in me. I'm no longer going to make them out to be something that they're not. Try to warn everybody. So I'm not going to bring it up to that person. I'm not going to bring it up to others. And I'm not going to bring it up to myself. Do you know what's taking place in my mind when I have problems, when we have marital conflict sometimes? I'm human. I mean, you know what? She shouldn't have done that. She shouldn't have said that. She should have taken care of this. And you know what's going on? I've got a little court battle going on in my mind. I'm taking it to court, and I'm saying this is happening and that's taking place and that shouldn't have happened like that. And I'm getting more and more angry. And you know what? You do the same thing. You do the same thing. And some of you are even punishing yourself because you're the perpetrator. You're the one who did the wrong thing. It applies to you as well. Stop bringing it up. In order to forgive yourself, you have to stop bringing it up. And you know what happens? The first time that you're reminded of this, the first time you say, you know what? I'm going to see that person today. I'm no longer going to treat them like they abused me. Whew. I'm no longer going to treat them like they did this to me. I'm no longer going to bring that up. Do you know what happens? It hurts. It hurts. I have a sixth grade teacher who I feel like abused me. I'm still not over it. I am almost 40 years old, right? I am still thinking about sixth grade. Do you know why? Because it comes up in my mind all the time. That guy abused me. Not in any other way, but more verbally and with discipline. And you know what? He friended me on Facebook the other day. But you know what? I didn't friend him back. I just want to be honest. I didn't friend him back. Because you know what? I'm still throwing wood on that fire. He shouldn't have treated me like that. He shouldn't have done those things to me. I mean, I'm getting kind of teary because that's like the core of who Matt is. Is that I responded to that. You know what I said? I said, no one will take advantage of me again the way that guy did. And I decided this: if you hit me, I'm going to hit you harder. And you know how well that works in marriage? It does not. And so I'm working through, I'm trying to study for a sermon going, I've really got some hatred for this guy, right? That's uncomfortable, right? But it's okay since I confessed it publicly, right? We'll let it go. Here's the thing. I'll never get to a point where my sixth grade teacher had not done those things to me. It'll always be the case that I was, or I at least perceived that I was abused. So there's no hope of any kind of reconciliation. There's no hope of racial reconciliation because the events in our past, the despicable events of slavery in our country, it already happened. The events in our country of all kinds of racial issues, it already happened. It cannot be undone yet. It cannot be undone. And if you're waiting for that to be undone, it'll never take place, and we'll continue to have more categories of different kinds of violence. We'll make up more moral rules, and we'll say, you can't do this and you can't do that because of this, because we can never resolve the conflict. We can never do it. But here's the thing. You and I must act forgiving before we feel forgiving. I have to act on forgiveness before I feel like forgiving that person. And it hurts. It hurts when you go, you know what? I'm going to friend him on Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have this relationship with this person. I'm going to go ahead and enter back into my marriage. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to forgive myself. It hurts. But you have to act forgiving before you feel forgiveness. And here's why. Because you're paying the cost. When you go and you say, you know what, I'm going to make that person pay, do you know what's happening in you? You're saying they are going to pay. They are going to pay up justice for this. They're going to be the one who pays. But what this says here is this. Proverbs 17:9, and we're almost done here. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. You know what that's saying? It doesn't mean I'm going to cover up that. I mean, Dennis Hastert, a Republican Speaker of the House, was considered to be one of the greatest speakers of the House that Republicans have ever had. Turns out that he had been covering up his sin from when he was a high school athletic coach. This is not the type of covering up that we're talking about. It is not a cover-up. It's saying this: I'm going to bury that hurt in forgiveness. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to deal with it. It means I'm going to bury that and I'm going to walk away from it. It means this, when you're at a restaurant, I love to do this because when I go to a restaurant with people, I'm a pastor, and sometimes people think, a pastor he's poor and they didn't have very much money. I always want to make sure that they know, not always, but sometimes, and I want to make sure that they know I'm not here for what you can give me. And so before they even have their wallet out, I say, the waitress walks up and says, I got it. And then, no, you don't need to pay. Nope, I got it. Having said that, all of you are going to pay next time I take you out to lunch, right? What I'm saying is this: I'm going to pay. I'm going to cover it. But you know what? The only way that you can do that, the only way that you can take that on is if you were to say this: I have a model that's in front of me. I have somebody who's already done that for me. I have somebody who has taken care of that for me in the same way. It says in Isaiah 53, it says about Jesus, it says that he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds we are healed. You know what Jesus said? He said this: I got it. Oh, no. Nope. I got it. David says in Psalms, against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, when he sinned with Bathsheba and then he killed her husband. He had this adulterous affair. And David recognized this, that my sin is against God primarily. So why does it matter that Jesus says, I got it. I'll cover this. I will cover this offense, because your hatred is not just against your spouse. And your slander is not just against your friends. And your gloating is not just against the people that you're gloating about. Your stuff is against God. Your stuff is primarily against God. And it says this: surely he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. He paid it. He paid it on the cross. And you say, I don't like the idea of suffering and wrath and all this stuff, but you live by it. When you say, I'm going to make him pay, they're going to pay the cost. You already believe in the wrath of God. It's written on your being. You already believe that justice must be done. You already live that way. Won't you believe that Jesus did that for you on the cross? And then you have the freedom to not bring it up and yet still hurt. But it hurts, I know. Jesus hurt for you on the cross. Then you have the freedom to not bring it up to others. But it hurts. I want to tell them. I want to warn them. Yeah, but Jesus hurt for you on the cross. He was crushed for your iniquities. And then you have the freedom not to bring it up to yourself. And you say, yeah, but it hurts. And I just have to keep thinking about it. No, you don't. That evil is shaping you into itself. Be conformed into the image of God by letting it go. Let yourself off the hook. Let yourself off the hook because Jesus took your place on the cross. Let's pray. Lord God, there are many of us in this room that are, in fact, I dare say that all of us on some level or another are experiencing some type of conflict. Lord, I pray that we would see how that is tearing apart our society, our homes, our city, our work life. And God, I pray that we would understand that these things are not going to go away. There are seeds of hatred and a lack of love that's going on. So, Lord, would you purge us of that by allowing us to see that you went to the cross for us and you were crushed for our iniquities. So, Lord God, we ask for that. And I pray that as we know and love your gospel, that Lord, it would transform our hearts. We ask you this in your name. Amen.